Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Zity Radar. My name is Romualdus, co-founder and product owner, curious on how technology will shape our near future. Zity Radar is a bi-weekly series of online events with the purpose to share best practice on how startups can master their growth in a smart and effective way. This time, on our episode 3 of the Radar is time management. We have a guest, Raitis Gocentas, communication and reputation manager from Cast AI, a growing startup in the field of AI-driven cloud optimization platform for Kubernetes. Raitis will briefly cover the most 5 important aspects of managing your time, even and especially if you are a marketer or work in a startup where there is an endless stream of tasks. In half an hour Blitz interview, we will cover Keynote, startups, marketing, and the eternal lack of time, how to manage time effectively. Q&A session. Please, if you have any questions right now, you can drop it to comment section, or you can do it later on during discussion. And finally, we'll have networking in Discord. I would encourage you to visit Zity Radar community on Discord to meet peer experts, startup founders, and other interesting growing network members. Communicate, share, and get insights. The link to Discord is in the comment section as well. In the keynote, you will learn prioritization, time planning, habit formation, time tracking, dealing with overwhelm. Without further ado, please help me in welcoming Raitis. Hi, Raitis. Nice to have you here on the show. I cannot hear you.
Hello.
Hi, Dan. Okay, so I know, Raitis, that formally you are an engineer, but in reality, a thrill-loving geek and marketer. You spend most of your time in freelancing and working with early-stage startups. So how do you come to the conclusion that that's enough? I can't waste my time anymore. Was there some kind of event, hard landing story, or just simply revelation?
Well, there's this point, especially when you are freelancing, which was also a part of my life.
Right.
When you realize that, well, I'm paid for some task for doing something specific, and I can do it either in 1 hour or 3 hours. So if I get paid the same, maybe I should do it in 1 hour and have 2 hours for myself.
All right. So when you're on your own ass, you start thinking like that. All right, great. So we are happy to hear more and learn more experience from you. So floor is yours.
Hey, so as I said, I have been freelancing and working in startups where there's essentially an endless stream of tasks coming my way. So I have learned the stuff the hard way, and today I'll try to share those learnings with you. And the way I like to see time management is to view it like a trip. So when you are going somewhere, well, you could be going somewhere here or in this other direction or somewhere there behind the screen. But in reality, even if you went to a place where you kind of want to be, you wouldn't know that because you didn't have a destination. And planning your goals and time out is this destination you would want to have. So that's the first thing. You need a destination. So having a destination is a must if you want to benefit from anything else that I'll cover later in this presentation. So let's just go to finding one. There are multiple frameworks and approaches to finding your destination or finding a goal you want to achieve. And talking about frameworks, there are objectives, key results, which are popularized by Google. Then we have OGSM, Hoshin Kanri, and many more. But well, I'm not here to bore you to death with those frameworks, so I'll just generally say that they boil down to the SMART principles for goal setting, which you might have heard already. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. As you may have heard about these already, I'll cover them briefly, but just know that each of those should apply to your goals, and especially if you are setting goals for yourself, like self-development goals or something. That's the most common place we forget to set those time-based and specific measurable goals, and that often is the reason why we do not achieve as much, let's say, in our self-development and self-driven activities as we would achieve in something at work. So specificity is a simple thing. Well, you have to know if you are going for this peak or this peak, because if your goal is to climb a mountain, then any of these two would do. Measurable, well, when it comes to climbing here, it's you either did climb to the peak or you did not, and you should be able to measure it. And while 80% of the way is not the ideal amount in climbing the mountain, it won't make you too happy. But in life and various tasks, 80% to 100% is perfectly fine, and that's actually the amount you should aim for. Achievable, well, that's realistically, people tend to overestimate how much they can achieve over a short period of time. That might be a day or a week or a month, up to a year roughly, and underestimate how much they can achieve over a longer period of time when sticking to something. So just realistically weigh if what you have in mind is achievable or not during the period you have set. Relevance is an important thing, but it's a quick decision on your part, especially for personal goals. When you set something up, think about it in a sense, does it really matter for you? Maybe you do not want to climb the mountain. Maybe you want to go down the river with a kayak. So just think about your goals for a bit, because if it's not relevant to you, you are not going to work as hard for it. And time bound is another pretty clear thing. Well, you have to have a deadline, because that's something you do when you want to make steady progress. An example SMART goal from marketing would be to drive 10,000 new users to the website via paid traffic until the 1st of May. So that's pretty understandable, I guess, and adaptable to any other field you might be in. And when we have got the goal, then comes the interesting part, the going for it, and probably the reason why you came to this presentation in the first place. You see, this character of ours seems wildly unprepared to climb that mountain, doesn't it seem so? So it's barefooted, it doesn't have a map, a compass, or food, or anything. So there is a slight chance of success, but it's more likely that our character will end up like this, being lifted from that mountain with a medicopter. So unfortunately, this is the sort of preparedness many of us have when approaching our own goals. Well, we might have a goal, we might even have a SMART goal, but when it comes to tools and tactics, how to effectively reach that goal, our knowledge often breaks down, or we don't have the right habits, priorities, or we don't keep track of our time. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about next. So all of those tools and tactics are the gear you need to climb that peak. So that looks way better than the unprepared character. And as I mentioned, with no specific representation in any of the items, we have prioritization, habit building, and time tracking as the tools and tactics within our disposal for reaching that goal. So let's go on to the first one, prioritization. Well, prioritization is something that we all kind of often do unconsciously. We just know that this is important, we should do this first. But unfortunately, if you are thinking, or you have to think about priorities every single time, you are in a bad position, because you are likely to forget something and maybe prioritize in a wrong way and do something that is not ideally suited for the situation. Just think about what would happen if our character, which I showed previously, even with the full gear, would be climbing the mountain and taking selfies with mountain goats like this. Well, it's okay once, but the character wouldn't get too far if he or she was taking this discourse from the path every time. So how do you prioritize? The biggest breakthrough in prioritizing to me came after reading a book by Alan Lacane. It's an old book from 70s, I believe, and is titled How to Get Control of Your Time and Your Life. I'll share the resources later in the presentation. And the idea there is simple, that you should split everything into 3 priority levels. And by everything, I mean the goals you set and the activities you have to do to reach those goals. But the most important part for me personally was going about prioritizing those activities. So I'll talk about that. And activities are daily or weekly. So that's the area where I guess you could get the most benefit. So you prioritize them into A, B, and C. And A are activities that matter and lead you to the most important goals you have set. Then you have B, which are important activities which might not be too urgent yet, but you will have to do them sooner or later. And then you have the C, which are not overly important now or ever. This is an important moment. So they shouldn't make your list for the day. I would go as far as to say that. And these C activities, they have a tendency to disappear even if you don't do them at all. So here's an example. Let's say we would have weekly tasks prioritized this way. There are only 5. We have launching 3 new landing page variations, reading and internalizing new research, and some more. And all of those relate to the goal we set earlier of 10,000 new visitors to the website. And then when you have weekly tasks, you can prioritize your tasks for every day in the same way. I like to put some numbers to at least to the A tasks, which indicate which of the A's are the most important ones. You may or may not want to do that. It's still a good thing, even if you only write a letter in front of that. So if you notice, let's say there are 2 C tasks, and the first one, it's relevant to our weekly tasks, but it's something that you are not going to do for the day. And it's an important decision. Like, you can decide that out of those important weekly tasks, there are things you should do, but you decided to not do them the next day, but do them 2 days from now, let's say. And that's a valid point that will help you focus, and that's what priorities are for. And the second C task is something that doesn't relate to the weekly task list at all. So what you do with those is usually try not to put them on your list, so there is less intention to accidentally start doing them, which most often will be procrastination from the A tasks. And just make sure that if it is really important, it starts to relate to some of the weekly tasks in the later weeks you have. So just rearrange things and see where this focus could lead you. And the surprising advantage of knowing these priorities is that if you set them the day before, it kind of frees you from the work at that day. So that is why I have built the habit of planning my days in advance on the evening before. And that kind of closes the day. You have fresh thoughts about what you did, what you still have to do. You write all of that down and say that, okay, that's it. I'm not going to work today anymore. And you close the laptop, or I don't know what might be your ritual, and go on with your other things. So as I mentioned, it's a habit, and building habits is the next thing I'm going to cover. So talking of habits, the main purpose of them is to stop relying on your motivation, because motivation doesn't last. Like you might be pumped to stick to your most important task today and self-discipline even without the priorities I mentioned earlier. But what happens if you, let's say, didn't get enough sleep and feel not too well today? Or maybe your puppy decided that your new pair of sneakers make a great toy. So all of those things can get you derailed quick, and that's why you have to rely not on motivation, but on systems and habits that will drive you forward, doing the right things, not just any random collection of activities that you thought up of. So how do you build a habit? As I've learned in James Clear book, Atomic Habits, the habit effort should have some characteristics, and it will be way more successful if you follow these rules. So first, to make it obvious, you either did the 8 tasks or you didn't. Then make it attractive. If you are doing this prioritization the day before, it's a good way to disconnect for the day, as I mentioned. So that's pretty attractive, at least to me. Make them easy. Writing some letters aren't that hard. And make it satisfying, because doing the stuff, well, it gets you forward in life and it's satisfying. So I get that there are more layers to it, like how much satisfaction you get from the job you do and many other things, but you'll have to find those answers to these rules for yourself. And don't be afraid to change things up. Well, when something is working, stick to it by all means. But if you feel that something else might be the better thing, and especially as you start implementing the practices that I mentioned earlier and internalize the principles of goal setting, priorities, habit building, and others, you might see that some other approach works better for you. And for me, that other approach that replaced prioritizing by letters was time blocking. And it's the time management method that Elon Musk supposedly uses, where he has his time split into blocks of 5-minute accuracy dedicated to a certain task. Happens in calendar, I suppose. At least in my case, it happens in calendar. But since I'm not sending rockets or Teslas to space, I stick to 15-minute accuracy and have pauses of 10 to 15 minutes after the task. So if I miscalculated my time required, I can finish it, or maybe I can just make a cup of tea and take a break so I can be more productive later. And here's a glimpse of how it might look. That's today. For me, I usually have it in one column, but spread it up so it's more visible. well, I guess the details are not that important, just that you fill your day with blocks of time dedicated to a certain task. But there's that problem with time blocking, and that problem is that it requires a good idea of how long do you usually take to complete a certain task. Otherwise you will end up being tense and nervous because you won't be making things in time, you will be late, and that's not a good feeling to have, especially not a good feeling to have every day. So this leads us to another tool and another approach in time management, and that is time tracking. So I guess you don't need explanation what is time tracking. It's the thing that crazy people do, right? And you know, there's a challenge for you. If you would be the crazy person and track your time for 1 month, I mean the waking time, not tracking some dreams, that would help you learn so much about you. Actually, the first month I tracked my time, I learned a bunch of things. Let's say how long I actually spent on social media or reading some irrelevant things. Well, you might have an idea, but when you actually track that time, it's, well, just try it. Then the second thing was how much longer I spent in the bathroom if I had my phone with me. Doesn't need much explaining, I guess. And the third one was how erratically and how late in the day I actually worked on the most important things. And this is due to the fact that I started tracking before I started prioritizing. And prioritization, and especially time blocking, solved that third one for me mainly. And if this is your reaction that it sounds way too much for you, well, that's okay. You might be thinking that I'm the kind of person that thinks about time all the time, trying to shave a minute here or there, and then overall in constant awareness of what's going on, but that's far from it. Let's look at our character. So it's well prepared, but if it's looking at GPS all the time, then it's going to end up the same way that the unprepared character did on the way to hospital after tripping over some rocks. So don't obsess to be perfect. Just try a tiny change to be better every day. And the most important question, of course, what if life has other plans? It always happens because, well, life has this tendency. You see, our character sees the peak, but doesn't see the valley in between those two mountains. And to top it off, when our character starts climbing, a rain cloud builds up in that valley, and that makes it a real valley of despair, unless our character has packed this metaphorical raincoat, which means a tool for dealing with overwhelm. So how do you deal with overwhelm? I prefer to take a high-level look at things, at every task that's waiting for me. And this is the way it really looks. I just take a spreadsheet and list those things out. You can notice there are more columns than only the task at hand. There's importance, duration, urgency, also if it's blocking progress for one of my coworkers or someone else. And you have no need to fill out everything for every task. You'll notice if you do this that after listing all of those tasks, you'll see which 3, 2, maybe 1 are the most important ones, and just figure out and select in the beginning from those 3 ones. So those 3 ones would be where you fill the cells to decide which one to start with. The green ones are those which are done. The white ones are not done and not too important as they seem, and the yellow to red is the more important ones. So key takeaways from everything that I have told are these. First, have a destination you would like to reach. Second is prioritize your activities for the day or longer periods of time. Also have habits, because habits beat motivation 9 days out of 10, so build them. Track your time to know how much time the tasks actually take and how much time you might be wasting somewhere. And if overwhelmed, stop and take a high-level look. And that's it. When you have these tools, you can conquer this peak and go for another peak and yet another. Or maybe adjust your gear a bit, take a kayak and go down the river for another destination. So it's up to you. When you start doing it, you realize the principles, you realize how different things affect you. You adjust the tools and tactics to your liking and go on with your life. So that's it. The resources mentioned, as I promised earlier, the time tracking app, books, and just don't be shy. If you want to ask questions, ask them now, or just send me a connection request on LinkedIn.
All right, thanks, Raitis, for presentation and through the story. So it really helped me to understand the different structure of the time management. So for me now it's clear that you should have a goal as destination for sure. In the first place, then you should be specific and you have to have goals measurable. And finally, it should be tracked, yes, because if you miss that part, so you go in meadows. All right, so we have a question. Any tips on fighting procrastination? You mentioned procrastination as well in the process.
Procrastination is usually delaying doing some important task which is not very attractive to you, and it might not be attractive due to various reasons. It might be just a task that you do not like doing at all, or it might be something that stresses you out, like you don't know how to do it, you don't know how to where to start it. So think about what is holding you back from this. What are you running away from by procrastinating? And that answer might get you to the point. Another possible solution is just to promise yourself that okay, I'll work right now for 2 hours or whatever time period, and then I will allow myself this procrastination thing on social media or whatever is the desire.
All right. So first of all, you have to think about that, yeah, about this, event of procrastination, and to find out the reason, and then go to prioritizing. If it's an important task in the regard, so you have to go for it, and if it's not, just can skip it, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And I also heard that some really high achievers use procrastination consciously. For example, they start some tasks and they on purpose stop in the middle, and they do that just to come back later on with different ideas. For example, they can finish the task in a moment, but they on purpose leave it for some day, for some time, so that they feel the procrastination and they could come back later on, with new ideas. So did you hear anything about that?
So the way you describe it, I kind of know what you're talking about. I just wouldn't call that pause procrastination. That is the well-known fact that you should switch from focused to non-focused, let's say, thinking. Or I can't recall the terms that some of that literature uses. But basically, if you put in focused work for some time, an hour or hour and a half, especially if it's something creative that you're trying to come up with, then a pause in that work. It ideally is like a day or so. Will help you come up with good ideas because your subconscious is working on that problem you were solved. But the prerequisite for that is that you should spend a fair amount of time doing focused work at first, because otherwise it won't happen. Like anything good won't happen.
All right. Camille, Pomodoro technique might help. Also, personally, I like to prepare a plan in the morning and prioritize those tasks. Leave some spare time for urgent or unplanned tasks. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely, that's that's a good advice. I see that Camila has figured out what works for her. So, if something works for you, keep doing it by all means. And maybe if you see that some of the tips that I provided could go into your system, try those out. Maybe they'll help you to get even more out of your time. Or maybe they won't. If they won't, well, don't use them.
Yeah, sure. I also agree with Camille. Pomodoro Watch can help you a lot. You can customize the time frames for your work. So 45 minutes, 30 minutes, or 5 minutes as Elon Musk. So yeah, it could work for sure. And what do you think about Elon Musk? How do you think how he manages his time? He's like a board member and CEO of SpaceX, Tesla, Boring Company, joining one more recently. So any ideas how
So
you think that?
I do not know the truth, but as I mentioned in the slides, I saw a video somewhere or something that he's using the time blocking technique, but
Right.
that it's quite strict in the time blocks. I mean, it's 5-minute accuracy and all of that. I imagine that's something that you need to do when you run several multi-billion companies.
All right. Okay. Okay, so we are running out of time. We don't have more questions. So to sum up shortly, three key pillars are prioritization, habit building, and time track. Is it correct?
Yes, I guess yes. Maybe time tracking wouldn't be for everyone, so I would say know your goal, know your priorities, and know how to deal with overwhelm when it comes, because it will come at some point.
All right. Thank you, Raitis. And we are running out of time, so please join our community in Discord. You can find the link to Discord here in the comment section. And for the next time, we'll have on Zity Radar cybersecurity, and you will get more info soon. So take care and see you in Discord. Bye-bye.
See you.